Hey, good morning, everybody. It's DJ. So today, I know on Fridays we usually have B&B class, and I do a couple of other things. Today is a different day. Today I want to take, because of the date that it is, and have today be something different. I want today to be a day of remembrance and thoughtfulness. Of things that have happened in our past in this country and things that are currently going on, and taking it as a day to really remember some of the things that we've gone through and how we persevered as a country, how we persevered through many of these things. And so today, of course, is September 11th, and I can't believe it was 19 years ago. So almost 20 years. Next year it'll be 20 years ago. It'll be the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks on New York, the Pentagon, and the Twin Towers, and the people who took the plane down as well in Pennsylvania. And so it's a good day to reflect. I don't know if you all remember where you were the day that it happened. I remember where I was. I had moved to California not too long before then. Probably about a year. I had been living there because I had to gain residency. But I was in school. And I remember being woken up by a phone call. Stayed up late studying the night before, so sleeping in a bit before classes that day. Got a phone call from a family friend, and they said, "Have you seen the news today?" And we were like, "No, haven't." You need to turn on the news and call me back when you have. And then we kind of watched everything unfold, and I remember how surreal it being. And just as it unfolded, it just got worse and worse. And the more the footage came in, the worse it got. And we thought for some reason, we're like, is there class today? It was just, and of course there wasn't going to be class today. It was a national emergency, but it was one of those things where I never been through anything like that before, And it did kind of harken back to Pearl Harbor. And I remember calling into the school and them saying, of course, classes are canceled, and we'll let you know when it's safe to come back to school. And it was an interesting time. So that day was, was definitely impactful, because I remember it sticks with you, things that are that traumatic. And I remember it very well. I remember the feeling of it. And I remember going to when we could go back to school. I remember it was interesting being in college at that time, especially at Humboldt State, because it's a pretty liberal school, to say the least. But a lot of people were very angry. A lot of professors, just took a day, the day students got back, just to discuss and let students vent and kind of say what's going on. But a lot of the professors were saying, we need to realize as the U.S. why we got attacked. People don't just attack your country because you haven't done anything to their country. And I never really realized that the U.S. was so hated around the world. Like, in some places, so hated that people were cheering that this had happened. That in a way, some people believed that we were a bully and we got hit finally. And so, I learned a lot. I'm not excusing anything that happened. It was an act of terror, and that should never happen. But I'm not going to go into the history of it or what behind it. If you have questions for me, I can answer those questions as to why some of these things happened. But I remember it being a very difficult time. There were a lot of people that were upset, and so I'm going to go over. Sam put together a PowerPoint. Now, she just sent it out last night, so this is the best way. I have it up here I've got a split screen of one of myself and one of the PowerPoint. I wish I could combine them together so I could go through together. Usually I'd print it out and have it over here for you, but I don't have that. So what I'm going to do is I will email it to you, and you can watch this video and look at this, or look at the PowerPoint, read it over yourself, and then watch the video. However you want, but this way you have both. But you did put together a nice PowerPoint. So it starts out with September 11th, 2001, and it's a picture of the skyline of New York when the Twin Towers were there. And they were huge. It was the World Trade Center. And they were, that's where everyone in the world came to trade. And, the significance of that isn't lost, as to why they were bombed. And so what we're going to do is just kind of go over, what had happened on that day. So that, it'll show you the skyline. So I remember seeing the skyline after. New York did not look the same after. So it says here that the original World Trade Center was a large complex of 7 buildings in the financial district of Lower Manhattan, New York City, United States. It opened on April 4th, 1973, and was destroyed September 11th, 2001. And it does show it again, them really towering above everything. And so again, it happened, it's crazy to think, 19 years ago. So I would have been 23 years old. So how old were you when it happened? Where were you? And I, went over mine. And do you remember the attack? Some of you are a lot younger than me, so maybe you were very young when it happened. But it still might have probably had an impact on your life. I know that when JFK was assassinated, my dad was very young, but he definitely remembers the impact and how much of an impact it had on his parents and his older siblings, who definitely, he could tell, were very affected by the whole thing. So where were you? How old were you? These are good questions. So here's a question. Why are they called the Twin Towers? Who knows this? So the Twin Towers were designed by architect Minoru Wamasaki, and because they were the main buildings of the World Trade Center. Again, and that's where all trade from around the world goes on, is at the Twin Towers. I think you have the North Tower and the South Tower, and and depending on where you're from in the world, it was really an epicenter for a lot of commerce and all sorts. So what did happen on September 11th exactly? So on September 11th, 2001, known as 9/11 in the U.S., it says in America, but it's in the U.S. because there's South America, Central America, but in the U.S. it's remembered as 9/11. So Islamist extremists hijacked 4 planes that were flying above the U.S. 2 of them were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York. Another was crashed into the Pentagon, the top military building in the capital city, Washington, D.C. And a lot of people believe that the last plane was headed towards, that went down, were headed toward the White House, possibly. And that's where the last crash site was supposed to be. So they were going to get the Pentagon, the Twin Towers, and then I think the White House. But then that last plane, people stood up to the hijackers and brought that plane down. And then it does have a picture here of the buildings being hit. A lot of people wonder why, and this is kind of a sad fact, something that I know. Like, why did the buildings finally come down? Because they hit very high up. But what the hijackers did is they stole planes that were very full on fuel. And what happened is the fuel being hit so high, it was so full of fuel that all that fuel just dripped straight down. And it was so hot that everything burned on the way down, and that's why everything kind of collapsed the way that it did. And had they not been as full of fuel, the buildings might not have all come the entire way down. But the way it was planned was very strategic and frightening. And airports have never been the same. I mean, and it's good. Security was ramped up after that. And then plane 3 hit the Pentagon. And what is the Pentagon? The Pentagon is the headquarters building of the United States Department of Defense. As a symbol of U.S. military, the phrase the Pentagon is also used as a metonym for the Department of Defense and its leadership. So plane 3 hit the Pentagon. I don't think that it hit where they exactly were intending, but it did a lot of damage, but it didn't do as much damage as the World Trade Centers. And then the final plane, in a field about 80 miles from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, was plane crash number 4. And I think there's a movie about this one. But plane crash number 4 is an aircraft, United Airlines Flight 93, crashed into an open field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania, killing all passengers, crew members, and terrorists aboard. So the Flight 93 story goes as such. People were able to call their families on the plane, and there were stories from families that passengers tried to stop the terrorists, and it was successful, but it ended deadly for everyone on the plane. So there is also, like I said, there's a movie about it called United 93 about the plane crash itself. And, something that did come out of this is, I think the terrorists who took over the planes were armed only with box cutters. And, if you have that many people on a plane and only 2 people that have box cutters, it's kind of a lot of people know now that they would act differently and would have gotten up and to do something, but it caught so many people by surprise, and how easy it was to get even small weapons onto a plane. But that people, a lot of times you think that, oh, I'm going to be big and brazen and I'm going to go and I'm going to fight back. It's not always the case. Sometimes it's very frightening, and you're like, somebody else is going to take care of this. But at that time, sometimes if you can see that nobody else is going to do anything, then it is kind of your time to stand up. Maybe rally people behind you. So the attacks shocked the whole world. It was the biggest terrorist attack over the United States of America. And there are photos of I remember watching it all day, hoping that as many people could get out of the towers as possible. And watching that the buildings come down, and just the mass amounts of smoke and everything, and ash and soot and concrete coming down and blowing through the streets of New York. It was frightening. I mean, and I have friends and family that live near there. And some friends, like, they weren't even there that day. And I mean, there's so many stories that you hear along, when it comes to this subject, that you'll hear from people that say, yeah, I lost people. There were people I knew that worked there. There were a lot of people that worked in that building, in those buildings. And so the aftermath of the Twin Towers that fell, the city comes together. Firefighters, doctors, nurses, police, men and women. All help that was given that day to clean and clear the damages. There were so many lives saved by our emergency medical workers that came in and just did an amazing job. And it's a very difficult job that they do. And so many people were saved, and so many brave people lost their lives by running back into buildings to help people. Because again, when people work in this field, their first instinct is to go back. It's almost trained in you. Once you've saved a life, I think it's one of those things that that's something that's part of you now, and you want to do it more. And when you have the training to do it, then you'll go back to do it. But, also a lot of citizens did the same thing. A lot of bosses would go back in and make sure their crew were getting out of the building. A lot of people did what they could, and people really banded together. And that, again, as I'll go in a little bit later, is what makes the U.S. great. To me, the people in our country definitely, when the worst thing happens, we tend to band together. Alright, so the next part here. So I'm guessing this is the new buildings that they're building in place, but their design features for the new Twin Towers features twin waterfall pools surrounded by bronze parapets that list the names of the victims of the 9/11 attacks. And so there's a beautiful shot here of the new building. Two powerful light beams are lit up in the lower Manhattan skyline as part of the annual tribute and light installation commemorating those who lost their lives on 9/11. Echoing the shape of the Twin Towers, the lights will fade away at dawn. So again, it shows that we thrive, but at the same time, we always need to remember. We need to remember that people lost their lives and people gave their lives to save others. And then it also shows the memorial site for United Airlines 93. It's called the Wall of Names, for all the brave people that fought back and decided to fight back and lose their own lives, but in order to save so many other lives. It's a powerful movie. I do recommend watching it, but again, be ready, because it is a very powerful movie. There's also a memorial at the Pentagon it's the Pentagon Memorial, located just southwest of the Pentagon in Arlington County, Virginia. As a permanent outdoor memorial to the 184 people who died as victims in the building and on American Airlines Flight 77 during the September 11th, 2001 attacks. So you can go visit this, and it will go through the story of that day. And again, this all happened in our lifetime. Which, at the time, I never thought anything like this would happen in my lifetime. So September 11th, 2020, 19th anniversary of September 11th, 2001, the attack on the Twin Towers and the attack on the United States. Now, what I did want to talk to you about a little more is that, again, when today is supposed to be a day of remembrance, and today is kind of an important day because, that was the biggest attack on the U.S. with the most lives lost in an attack as such. We're also going through that same thing right now. We're in a stage, in a place of national crisis when it comes to the pandemic. And what we need to remember is that these things mirror each other in a lot of ways. And what I'm always proud of is that in the U.S. that people band together. And it's all our responsibility. And again, right now, I give thanks to everyone that is doing their part. Be it a person wearing a mask, be it an employer ensuring that people wear their masks, be it the workers out there that are fighting not only wildfires, but they're also, wearing masks and trying to be socially responsible and helping to break up, riots, but also people protesting for rights during a time of, there was a lot of social unrest even after 9/11. and all these things spring up together. When disasters hit, a lot of times, a lot of things kind of get out of whack, but it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility as citizens as well. It's not, we don't need to rely 100% on the police or on firefighters. They have such a job that they have to do, that we need to take care of our own as much as we can and be responsible citizens. Like I said, there was social unrest after. I mean, there were a lot of attacks on people that immigrated to this country that had nothing to do. I remember I worked at a place during college, and there was a little mart across the street that I used to go every once in a while if I just had to pick up something before I went home. And it was a nice Indian family, and I used to go in there all the time, and just they were always very friendly. And the day I went to work, I don't know if it was on that day, if I actually worked on September 11th, because the store we were always open from Monday through Sunday, or Sunday through Monday. And so I went in there, on a certain day. I don't know if it was that day or if it was a couple of days after, but I went in to buy something. And there were some people harassing them and saying they need to go back to their country, that they don't belong here. And, I immediately, I didn't yell at anybody, but I argued, and I kind of helped explain the situation, that they're from India. India is a country that has nothing to do with any of the terrorist attacks. Just because they have a different skin tone, they're from a different country, does not mean that they're terrorists. And again, it's something that had to be reminded to people. But again, it's our civic responsibility, it's our duty, it's our moral and ethical duty to stand up and say something. And just like now with everything that's going on, it's people's duty to stand up and say something. It's their code that they need to fight for, their moral and ethical code. And again, that's up to us citizens to be responsible with that. Because again, the police and the military and firefighters and nurses and doctors, they all have their jobs to do that are within the scope of helping society. And, it's a job they signed up for that is very difficult. And so it's our job to be just as responsible and pull together as people so that we can really become strong and get through this. So again, I implore to you that today we take a day of remembrance for people that have lost their lives. People that have lost their lives through this pandemic, that continue to lose lives, and also the people out there fighting to get through this. And you're one of those people. You are people that are doing that by wearing masks, by being responsible, by showing up to program every day, by trying to get things back to normalized, by listening to, or taking classes, and really paying attention to the classes to make sure, and also doing what you do, cooking, and, helping around the house, doing whatever you can, shopping for your family, doing what you can, These things really make a difference. Oh, pardon me. That was my vacuum. But these things really make a difference. And so I have to say, I take my hat off to everyone doing their job, to firefighters, to police officers, to the medical personnel, to the military, to everyone that's out there fighting the good fight right now, to everyone out there that fought the good fight on 9/11 and really help people. I want us to remember not to be sad, but to know that, this country is an amazing country. We have a lot of liberties, and we should use them and fight for them. And in order to get back to where we want to be, we need to make sure that we're doing our part, and we will do our part. I love my country. I love where I'm from. I love that I'm part of this country. I'm not always proud of it. Believe me, there are many times I'm not that proud of this country. But I love my country. I do. And So today is a day of remembrance. I will definitely have all of you in my minds today. And reach out to anybody. Give them a hug. Make today a day that is special. To remember how strong we are when we're banded together. Alright. I miss y'all. Peace. And I will talk to you soon. Bye for now.